The presidency has released a statement accusing outlawed separatist group, the indigenous people of Biafra, of working to discredit the Nigerian government internationally. In a statement by President Muhammadu Buhari's spokesperson, Garba Shehu, IPOB is accused of spending $85,000 monthly to lead a smear campaign that claims the Nigerian government is encouraging the persecution of Christians. He alleges in the statement that IPOB, along with some Christian non-governmental organization and a U.S. lobbying firm, have been sending letters to the U.S. Congress on claims of genocide. Shehu laments the decision of the U.S. Congress to yield to the persuasion. He warns both Nigerians and the international community not to buy into the campaign, describing it as divisive. IPOB has been clamoring for independent country of Biafra, made up of the Igbo-speaking parts of Nigeria, largely in the southeastern parts of the country. Well, this isn't actually new. You'll recall 2 years ago when President Muhammadu Buhari, as the first president of sub-Saharan Africa, went and visited President Trump confronted him with this claim that Christians are being murdered, especially from America. There's been a lot of condemnation about how the government is sitting idly by while Christians are being massacred. And it's not just the American government. You have Amnesty International, which, as its name suggests, is an international NGO, also condemning the inaction of the government. Last year's statistics were 1,000 Christians had been murdered. Between 2015 and 2019, 6,000, while 12,000 had been displaced. These numbers are quite staggering. The fact that we hear of murders constantly, we hear of kidnappings, abductions like Leah Sharibu, the leadership of Christian Association of Nigeria, we hear all these things. But we shouldn't be inured. These are lives that have been lost, and the numbers are quite staggering. So I'm not that persuaded by the government's sort of complete disavowalment of this situation. There is a problem.
Well, IPOB's position is that, there is a genocide targeted at Christians. And when you look at how Christians have been targeted in certain parts of the country, particularly in southern Kaduna, in Plateau State, and other parts of North Central, then, of course, you are likely to believe that narrative. And also, if you look at the threat of Boko Haram, it will appear that although Boko Haram has targeted persons of all faiths, there's been some kind of sharp focus on Christians in particular. And you recall that when the Chibok girls were abducted, there was also this narrative around the abduction of the Chibok girls. When you looked at the list, most of the girls on that list happened to be Christians. And the way the international community conceived of that was that, look, there is an attempt to target Christians in Nigeria. And then, of course, you know that the international media also has been promoting this kind of perspective, because Nigeria is usually described in many international reports as the Muslim North and the Christian South. Whereas, in terms of faith, the northern part of Nigeria is not that homogeneous. No. There are Christians there. There are persons of other faiths. There are all kinds of people with belief systems in the north. However, I think it's important that the government says, look, yes, there may be religious issues in Nigeria, but there is nothing called genocide that is officially sanctioned or approved. No. But we can all take the point that the government needs to do a lot more in terms of ensuring the security of lives and property, whether this is Christian or religion or Muslim or animist. Yeah. That's the bottom line. And
it has to be said, laying credence to a certain Christian magazine that published a very damning report about Christians being murdered and massacred in Nigeria, which the government didn't make response to. It's obvious that there's a big problem, a very pervasive problem in the north, and how we can work hard at nipping into the bud, because all lives matters, be it a Christian life or Muslim life. It's really important.
Absolutely. Well, that's all on the news headlines. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have the trio of Rotas Odiri, Michael Wilson, and Aaron Akerejala to give us updates on Africa and global business and COVID-19. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Our dependable Rotus Odiri is here to give us Africa business update. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Tundun.
Morning.
And good morning, Rufai. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, Rotus.
All right. So the first thing, news that's making headlines, of course, is in Africa, of course, is the OPEC Plus meeting and the fact that they agreed to extend the production cuts for an extra month. Now, a Ministry of Petroleum did send out a tweet. This was on Saturday. As OPEC meets today, we want to, let everyone know that we will be complying with the outcome of the meeting, and also the fact that countries who do not attain full compliance will have to, I think it's as a penalty or so, in subsequent months, May, June, July, and then the extended months, July, August, will have to make up for whatever shortfalls they had in the production cuts. The next conversation has been about what the impact will be in those production cuts on Nigeria. Now, this is a rough calculation that I did here, so please don't hold me to it, because one of the dailies did a calculation. I saw it over the weekend. I thought, I didn't really agree with it because they were looking at the production cuts. So if we look at what the impact is supposed to be on Nigeria, according to Timi Presilva, back in May, we had a production of about 1.6 million barrels per day. We should get this image up for our viewers to be able to take a look at that. But 1.6 million, there it is, 1.6 million barrels per day. That's the first line, so stay with me here. Versus the reference production of 1.8 million barrels per day. Now, the difference is supposed to be 216,000 barrels per day. That difference was 52% compliance with OPEC Plus. So Timi Presilva, Ministry of State for Petroleum, said that we will get to 100% compliance in the subsequent months. So we're assuming June and July. So if you are looking at 216 barrels per day as a 52% compliance, if you just multiply by 2, for 100% compliance, it comes out to 432,000 barrels per day, but I rounded it up to 430,000 barrels per day. Now, for the subsequent months for June, July, if you produce 430,000 barrels per day, which is at 100% compliance, the reduction comes out to 25.8 million barrels per day over 60 days. You multiply that, and this is where the assumptions come in. If you multiply that by $40 per barrel, which I'm just averaging, oil prices probably won't stay at $40. As of today, I think they are 43 or so, or 42. But just using the assumption of $40 per barrel, your revenue is about $1.03 billion over those 60 days. Times 360 naira per dollar, you come out to about 317 billion naira in revenue. But you've got to deduct your costs, which, if we assume your cost is at $30 a barrel, times those same 430,000 barrels a day, you come out to a cost of about 774 million barrels. Subtract your costs from your revenue. Implied loss over the next 2 months if Nigeria complies at that amount of 430,000 barrels, 100% compliance, you're looking at 92 billion naira for Nigeria. So again, it's just a calculation. If we move on now and take a look at where oil prices are right now, about $42.86 a barrel. And if you look at the trajectory, the movement over the last week, it has been climbing. So again, that's just a rough calculation on my part on what Nigeria might lose with regards to complying with the OPEC Plus cuts. Still on the matter of oil and gas, we move to the Petroleum Products Pricing Regulatory Agency. They backtracked over the ones yesterday, according to their Executive Secretary Abdul Kadir Sadiu. Oil marketers will not be allowed to fix prices, pump price. Now, initially on Friday, I believe we talked about this on Friday, they did say that, with they will be removing the cap on PMS prices, and oil marketers will be able to, fix prices according to the guide that PPPRA is supposed to provide on a monthly basis. But now they've come out and said that actually no, they won't be able to fix any prices. You're just going to follow the guide. That's a bit disappointing because we're supposed to be moving into a deregulated environment. And if you look at what the cost is for the average oil marketer to bring in refined crude into the country, selling right now 125 or so is not really going to work out for them, which is why NNPC is still the major marketer. So we'll see how things go there. Next story comes out of Zimbabwe. There is a startup company called Mobility for Africa. They are providing, renting out rather, solar-powered bikes. These bikes are being used by healthcare workers. You're seeing this lady, she's a healthcare worker who is making a delivery from one part of Zimbabwe, a rural area, to another. According to this lady, pregnant women in Zimbabwe were walking 12 kilometers at least to get to a hospital to to deliver their babies. So with these bikes, they're going to be able to move them around. They don't require fuel, and essentially they're going to be renewable energy bikes. So they haven't launched yet, but again, Mobility for Africa is looking at launching these across parts of sub-Saharan Africa later on. And then finally, the issue with Tizeti, the sexual misconduct allegations against Kendall Anyani, it continues. They released this tweet, or rather this announcement, saying that he would be stepping down. Again, just to reiterate, a young lady made an allegation stating that he exposed himself to her while they were at an accelerator program for technology, and she put this out on Twitter. So they now came out with this tweet saying that he's going to be stepping down and replaced by a couple people while the investigations are going on. But this was last night. Then they deleted the tweet. They then deleted it, and then he now puts out a tweet himself. His Twitter account has been locked all this time. He then releases a tweet after that saying that he denies everything that she said and that he's, waiting to see how things turn out. So, people have responded to him. I responded to the tweet saying, okay, are you stepping down or are you not? This tweet we're looking at, this announcement here, has officially been deleted by Tizeti. So that whole sexual misconduct case continues as far as the discussion is concerned. We'll have to see what happens there.
Well, it doesn't appear that he is stepping down if that tweet was deleted. Yeah. But it's a good thing that he's come out to speak for himself. And thank you for that news about Mobility for Africa. That is so cheering on a Monday morning. Yes, fingers crossed with that. Yeah, it's amazing.
Very good one.
Amazing.
Very good one. And I think, just to talk about Tizeti real quickly, I think they have to be very careful when they are making board internal decisions to be quick to go put out messages. It should be thought through. Yeah. If you are letting the man go, reach a consensus, let him go. Don't put out a message and recall the message. It makes you look like a joke as a company, and it has to be said, because in the midst of all of this allegation, people are not thinking things through properly before they do things, especially companies.
Well, in any case, it's just that in this particular case, the man himself is co-founder of the company, and I thought, he should show good example by stepping down to allow investigations to be carried out. But quickly, on OPEC and what has been decided, I think what the OPEC has decided to do is to be cautious. The decision that was taken in April was to seek a balance between demand and supply. But what they've taken is a cautious approach now, because you note that there is still a lot of inventories, there are a lot of oil in storage facilities that could change the dynamics of the market. So it's good that they've said, look, they will take another month to look at what happens. And it was good to see China and Saudi Arabia and Russia agreeing on this particular point.
Yes.
But last week I asked you a question about what do you think OPEC would do with the laggards, with persons who do not meet, countries that do not meet, respect the production cuts, like Nigeria, Angola, Iraq. Iraq was made to give a commitment at the meeting. How about Nigeria? How about Angola? I asked you whether there is any sanction for any country that again defaults.
Yes, that was in the Ministry of Petroleum's tweet. So far, what they're saying is if you default, you have to make it up in the subsequent month. So if you default by, say, 100,000 barrels or 50,000 barrels, you add that default amount or that margin to the following month. So it doesn't seem like there's any harsh penalties for now. For now, it's just according to that tweet, you have to make it up in subsequent months.
Thank you, Reuters.
Thank you.
Moving on to more business update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Good morning. Well, we've seen Asia markets take a few very small gains, really, from that big move on Friday. We'll come back to that in just a moment. There's a feeling that governments, at least around the world, are beginning to take control of the COVID-19 pandemic. New Zealand has eradicated it completely, according to its own government. So that's adding to that kind of story. European stocks will open, they'll open slightly lower this morning, I think, or maybe just sideline because of that massive day on Friday. We were waiting over the weekend for some data out of China. You've touched on China already this morning, clearly a very important and controversial economy as far as the rest of the world is concerned. The trade data was relatively disappointing. One of the reasons is that it's felt there was a lot of PPE equipment being exported from China at the beginning of the crisis, and that's kind of fallen back. But as you know, China is a massive importer of metals, energy, and agricultural commodities. And let's hope for the rest of the world, including many countries in Africa, that that actually continues. Europeans have begun to return to work. Big contractions are beginning to ease. They've got some very clever little gizmos in Europe which track mobility and driving, actually people moving around, and that's sort of increased slightly. German industrial production, sorry to be dull with the figures, but we do need to obviously look at Germany, and their nosedive is at least getting a little flatter.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Michael Wilson is still with us with the Global Business Update. Yes, Michael, we're back to you.
Thanks very much indeed. Yes, so I was talking about Germany's industrial production, which is a very important figure, obviously. The nosedive is, at least they put it, getting flatter, but it's still on the way down. A lot of criticism arising, and we predicted this would happen last week, about the EC's €750 billion recovery fund. There's a bit of doubt as to which particular countries are going to benefit from this. And some of the poorer countries, maybe, who haven't managed their economies just as well, may get a little bit more than some of the northern countries. The northern countries don't like that at all. They're saying, we actually have been very good about our economies. We have reformed and we've been quite careful. Why should we be giving money away to the less cautious southern parts of that? At the same time, and here's the complication, a lot of those countries, the southern countries, have actually got back to what we think is normal much more quickly than the northern ones. So a lot of complications there. Now, let's get back to those US jobs figures, if I may, from Friday. You no doubt took note of the fact that they were absolutely astounding. Well, they sort of were. But if you really think about what's going on there, and I think this is very important, it's all right taking notice of what the markets are actually saying. But those jobs are not necessarily going to come back to the poorer citizens of the United States, and we've seen the rioting there. We know what the rifts are, the social rifts are in that country. Well, let's talk about the expense of it all as well, and I think that may be quite considerable. So that's the backstory, I think, at least, to those jobs figures. Yes, a bit of a rebound. Yes, a big rebound in terms of the general bit of bad news about everything. But I think the story has got a long way to go there. It did at least help the dollar out to snap out of its losing streak. It closed slightly higher on Friday. That will have all sorts of implications for your imports and exports in Africa, naturally. I won't go into the detail of that now. You were talking about OPEC. Yes, they did agree to production cuts. Yes, they did decide, Doctor, as you said, that they would take a cautious view. I think there's a lot of countries will be looking at this and saying, do you know what, we'd actually quite like the revenue. So I think there'll be quite a lot of cheating going on. And yes, I'm certain that OPEC will try to crack the whip about that. But I'd be very, very surprised if they succeed, particularly when countries say, look, why can we not get revenues out of oil? We've seen the price it go into negative. Now it's coming back again. We need that revenue. We need to get the oil out of the storage tanks and put it back in our economies. In the UK, it looks like restaurants and pubs will open, but in a very, very odd way by June the 22nd. Scientists are worried about this business of quarantine and visitors, and we think that may well be lifted. There's a thought to have 14 days of quarantine for people actually coming into the UK. Tourism is massively important to Europe, both as the UK is concerned and other European countries as well. And the parent company of British Airways, IAG, is taking the government to court right now about this quarantine, saying it's absolutely crazy. Two quick ones for you. Huawei is fighting back, the Chinese technology company. A lot of countries recalibrating their view about Huawei and what it ought to be doing with their own technologies. And there's going to be a lot of tit for tat as far as that goes. So oil price up, and keep an eye, as you always do, because I keep telling you, Dr. Copper. Keep looking for that, because when copper starts to rise quickly, we're back to what we used to think or used to call normal.
But Huawei, what options are available to Huawei, and do you see China adopting countermeasures to target U.S. companies?
I do. I think there'll be a lot of tit for tat as far as that's concerned. Huawei is already warning that it'll take a long time to extract its present position as far as technology in the UK and presumably by implication in the United States is concerned. You will know that the United States is trying to encourage semiconductor companies to start manufacturing in the US as well. The British government has been talking to NEC and also Samsung in a way in which it hopes may well replace Huawei to some extent. There's a lot of talk going on at the moment. Better, as they say, jaw than war and all the rest of it. But Huawei is back on the offensive again, and I think this is going to be a very fruity discussion to come.
Michael Wilson, thank you. We'll see you tomorrow morning.
Now for an update on the COVID-19 pandemic, Aaron Akirajola joins us. Good morning, Aaron.
Yeah, good morning, Tundun, with your hair as wavy as the seas in the Navy.
Hey,
all right.
Here comes Aaron the White.
Doctor, good morning to you.
Good morning.
And Rufai, it's good to see you. I have you back.
Aaron, just to let you know, I am totally miffed at that poetry.
Rufai, I'll get to you in a moment.
I'm not happy about it.
I told him to be careful.
Please be very, very careful.
All right, Okay, let's dig into the crux of the matter today.
I'm loving it. Fabulous.
All right, let's focus on actually visiting into India, where things are actually spiraling out of control. At the moment, India are actually recording some grave numbers. As a matter of fact, 10,000, close to about 10,000 cases were recorded yesterday, all right, Sunday into Monday, all right, and the spread has been quite devastating in India, and you can actually see it there on the screen. And the number, although in the country, the number of deaths is still relatively low in terms of the population, all right, 7,135, but at the moment, the numbers are climbing steadily. They are now the fifth most infected nation of COVID-19 behind the likes of Brazil, Russia, United Kingdom. All right, India has it there with 258,090 patients at the moment, and it's quite grave. Of course, you can see on the right hand of the screen that the breakdown of the states and the districts that actually have all this, with Maharashtra and the likes of Delhi, the likes of Gujarat, having major spikes in the number of COVID-19 cases, and is one to watch out for. And more importantly, the Indian government are still insistent that today businesses and several sectors of the economy will be opened, and in the bid of trying to probably relax the pressure on the economy at the moment. People have warned against that, but the government has still insisted they will go on to open life in India from today.
Well, I mean, it's not only in India that we're seeing a spike in the figures. In Iran, there is a similar problem, although the Iranian authorities are saying this is as a result of improved testing. In Brazil has stopped announcing total number of cases because the numbers have just gone entirely through the roof. And we're having in Brazil now a case of 1 death per minute, as it is described. So President Bolsonaro had to direct that only daily data should be given and no cumulative data should be made available to the public. In Israel, schools were opened 3 weeks ago, but they've had to close down the schools again because the number of pupils and teachers who were testing positive had increased. So I just hope that there will be lessons that we can learn from all of this. It's the same situation also in Saudi Arabia. So as Nigeria reopens, we can learn from what we have observed in some other parts of the world, I hope.
Now, but before you, since you mentioned Saudi Arabia, of course, Saudi Arabia crossed the 100,000 mark in number of cases, and it's quite troubling understanding the fact that, of course, you can actually see there the breakdown of how things are in Saudi Arabia. What is still very troubling at the moment is that there's no clear statement from the government as to what will happen, because a lot of people are still expecting this spike to go up, understanding that at the moment authorities have announced whether they're not still sure whether they will proceed with this year's Hajj, which comes up next month. The end of next month, this year's Hajj will be coming up, and they are expecting that if the Hajj goes on as planned, then the number of cases in Saudi Arabia and in that Gulf region will spike up. But at the moment, they've urged Muslims Muslims to temporarily defer preparations for the annual pilgrimage, but as it stands right now, no official statement has been given to call that one up. And also massively, if we move away from Saudi Arabia to Mexico, you can actually see that at the moment, Mexico is another hotbed and another place that everyone needs to watch out for, because at the moment, as of this morning, close to about 14,000 deaths have been recorded in Mexico. And it has been troubling the government for quite a while right now.
I mean, it's quite very sad. But in all of this, one thing that remains germane is leadership and taking decisive action, knowing where you are going. A clear case, like you talked about Brazil, the reason why this happened in Brazil was because Jair Bolsonaro ruined the process himself. He went about saying COVID does not exist in Brazil, and he was at loggerheads. He had two health ministers leave him because of this. Look at America, too, because of the inefficient leadership of Donald J. Trump. So leadership has to be the order of the day. Leadership to be able to marshal out a network of how to test, and trace. It has to be very importantly stated.
Well, which is why you have on the opposite end of the spectrum of incompetence, Jacinda Ardern of New Zealand, who has done a stellar job of containing the COVID-19 outbreak. They have declared themselves COVID-19 free. The borders are still remaining closed,
Excellent.
Apart from those who have some kind of economic benefit to impart on New Zealand, which is, she has to be commended for her work that she did. And they took quick action. Within 26 days of their first case, the lockdown rules had been established and they were adhered to.
All right, Tundun, I'm glad you actually said that. And although they have told the citizens they're not in the clear, but their focus will now be on isolation centers and the borders to ensure that whatever is coming in can be nipped in the bud. But before we go, a look at the global figures shows that 7,016,794 is the number of confirmed cases as of this morning. It has passed the 7 million mark right now. And in terms of global deaths, it has actually passed the 400,000 mark. And this is very instructive to countries, especially those who are easily locked down, despite the spike. We've mentioned Saudi Arabia, we've mentioned Mexico, we've mentioned Brazil, we've mentioned also India. Despite the spike in the number of deaths and confirmed cases, most of these countries are still saying that they cannot keep their economies closed and they have no choice but to just throw the economy open, regardless of what the experts are saying. So let's hope that they are looking at the figures and are looking at the number of deaths as we cross the 400,000 mark in the number of confirmed deaths from COVID-19.
We have the current data on Africa.
All right, looking at Africa quickly. All right, the number of confirmed cases, 184,333, with 5,071 deaths recorded at the moment, and the recovery rate stands at 81,780. At the moment, the southern part of Africa is still a very, very hot spot for COVID-19. We are seeing more cases there than anywhere else compared per capita, when you put it that way, because the northern part of Africa certainly has the most number of cases, but per capita, the southern part of Africa still takes the cake at the moment.
Well, thank you very much, Aaron Akerejola. We'll see you again tomorrow morning.